Hello everyone, it's Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. And today we're back with another XY on deck analysis. This is going to be an updated version of Manetric. I feel like Manetric's probably one of the best archetypes going into XY on, seeing as though it can compete with Rayquaza quite nicely thanks to typing and other such things. And just in general, it's a fast, hard-hitting Mega that can be difficult to get around for a few decks, so I think it's pretty good to see this card continue to be very strong, and it gains a bit of support through some new cards. So I will say I've not opened up my packs yet, so there's going to be a few proxies in here. They'll look a little grayer than real cards, so they'll be fairly noticeable, but the idea is there. So let's just head into the deck right now. So first off, we're playing a full 4 Manetric EX. I usually like to play 3 Manetric, but I feel like XY on, it's so much nicer to start with this guy because you don't really get punished for it as much now that Landorus isn't really a thing. I guess Lucario is, but we still have some fighting resistors in the deck to deal with that sort of deck anyway. So just starting with Manetric is like always good, and having 4 is nice so that we can Mega up as frequently and as quickly as possible. Like I say, starting with this guy is ideal because he has 2 really powerful early game attacks, so I really like seeing Manetric as a 4 of in here, and I think it works really nicely in testing so far. Next up, we're playing 3 Mega. Very powerful cards, just inherently strong. The free retreat is amazing. Turbo Bolt is great. It adds acceleration to the deck for a few other things, like other Manetrics on the bench potentially, and just our other tech attackers that we're playing. It's really nice. HP is pretty good as well. It's difficult to get one hit for the most part unless it's a big one-hit KO based deck like a Rayquaza. Maybe Tyranitar can do it, but overall it's fairly difficult to get through. You're 2-hitting Megas for the most part, and just good numbers overall. Manetric's really strong. We all know what it's about, really. Next up, we're playing 3 Shaymin EX. I think Shaymin, there's more emphasis on Shaymin in the new format because we have slightly weaker draw support, so I think putting it up to 3 is pretty important. I used to just play like 2 or so in here, maybe just 1 and then 1 Jirachi, but we can't really do that anymore, so I've gone up to 3 Shaymin, and it's working out okay so far. Next up is another new card from Ancient Origins. It's going to be Lugia. Lugia, very, very strong, serves a couple of good purposes in here. First of all, it has a resistance to fighting, which is very nice. It can really help us out against Lucario. And it has, like I say, the Aero Ball attack, very similar to Mewtwo's X-Ball. We're all familiar with that attack. And we also have Deep Hurricane, the second attack as well, doing 80 plus 70 more if there's a stadium in play, and discard it. This can help us finish off Pokemon that we've not been able to kill with Manetric. It can sometimes even combo with the early game overrun attack. So there's plenty of options for Lugia. We play our own stadium, other people play stadiums, so we can sometimes get the trigger off for that. And it really helps out when we can't 2-shot Megas. For the most part, they're big chunky ones like Primal Kyogre, Groudon, Tyranitar. All of them run high energy attacks, so Lugia can come in and swing to finish them off, whereas Manetric probably couldn't 2-shot them because we're stuck at 110, but Lugia can get nice and high thanks to the amount of energy they play. It's obviously great as well, combines with the Turbo Bolt. We can stack up a huge threat on the bench whilst we still have a massive Mega in the active position, so we put threats all over the board with this deck, and I really like it. Next up, we're playing 1 Seismitoad. Seismitoad just slows down other things. I like using it sometimes against Ray even in early turns. It's another nice option against Lucario also, just buying you enough time to maybe come in with a Deep Hurricane the following turn. Because we don't play Muscle Band in here, Lugia can't really one-shot things with his Deep Hurricane, so sometimes peppering stuff up with stuff like a Quaking Punch or an Overrun is pretty necessary, and I like just the train lock aspect. Slowing people down sometimes can get you enough turns to get back into the game, and so I just like having the utility of having it in here. Next up, we're playing 1 Hoopa. I think Hoopa is fantastic for this sort of deck. We have, as you can see, every other Pokemon I've shown so far is EX. It really helps us secure turn 2 Mega Manectrics. It helps us find the thing that we want to charge up, be it a Lugia or maybe another Manetric. And basically it just makes 1 Ultra Ball super strong for us. It can obviously find a Shaymin as well to draw more cards. So Very, very helpful for Manetric and overall consistency, I'd say. I really like having one in here. Finally, we're playing one non-EX Pokemon, and it's Zapdos. I prefer just having straight lightning in this deck. We also have DCs, but I'd rather not stray away from just having lightnings in here. There are some useful like water types that people go down sometimes with Manetric, but I've stuck with a straight Manetric here. And Zapdos fills the role of having, once again, fighting resistance, which is pretty useful, and also just an attack that can hit 120, which sometimes works out with good math. With the Turbo Bolt combination, we can hit 230 in 2 turns with this combo, so that's pretty useful. And yeah, sometimes it can be just annoying to get around, good against non-EX decks. We need to sort of put them into a 7 prize game situation, and Zapdos can fill that role better than most other lightning type basics that we have out there. Really, we have a very limited card pool in terms of good lightning type non-EX basics, so this could be switched out for anything you want, really. Like even a Deden or something I tried out for a little bit, but just because we have the energy acceleration already, I feel like Zapdos makes a bit of sense to me. And yeah, it's basically the best of a bad bunch that we have, but it just fills the role for me. It could even be a Regigigas, something like that. However, that does also have fighting weakness, so maybe something to consider there. Next up, onto trainers. We're playing 2 Switch. Despite Manetric having a free retreat, the Lugia, the Hoopa, the Zapdos, and the Toad are all chunky, so moving between our attackers is very helpful. We sort of need it as well because Rough Seas is a large element of this deck, so keeping things damaged like away from the active position is nice, so that eventually the Rough Seas is going to make it more difficult for our opponent to get knockouts and really force Lysanders early on. So having these switches, being versatile, moving in between our things is very nice. Next up we have 2 Trainers Mail. I feel like it just keeps us ticking along quite nicely, helps us find more supporters, more Ultra Balls, which basically like starts the combo with the Hooper. So Trainers Mail, very nice to have a couple of in here, helps us get into our stuff. Additionally, we have 2 Battle Compressor. It works really nicely for finding the right supporter that we need, which is really cool, because of course we're going to be playing VS Seeker, which I'll show in a moment. It helps us get energy in the discard pile for the Turbo Bolts, and it can also get rid of things that we don't really need. Say we don't need the Toad or something, if we're up against Sceptile, we can just dump that straight away with Compressor, so it's pretty useful in here. It thins out the deck as well, which is nice because there's a few fairly dead cards in here sometimes in matchups, and it's good to just dump them pretty much. Next up we have 4 VS Seeker. I think because we're playing Battle Compressor, it's very much worth playing 4 in here, because it just makes such a nice turn 1 combo for any supporter that you want, and that's really nice to have. Just in general, it can fish back supporters that we need. We play a couple of techie ones in here, like the Hex Maniac is going to help us out in certain matchups, so having maximum odds to get into those sorts of cards, to get through certain threats, maybe shut off an Altaria against a Rayquaza deck, stuff like that, it's going to be very helpful to us, so having 4 I feel like is perfect. Thanks to Hoopa, like Ultra Ball is the best card in our entire deck. It's a search your deck for 3 EX Pokemon, which is basically every card in our deck apart from the 1 Zapdos. So Ultra Ball just becomes ridiculously overpowered with Hoopa. Also, it can get lightnings in the discard pile. We know what Ultra Ball's all about, but just the value that you can get off of this just 1 card is pretty crazy. Sorry, I'm annoying myself. I'm going to relay out these trainers to make it easier for you guys to see what we've got so far. I was trying to make a conscious decision to do that, but I've completely forgotten. Next up for tools, we have 2 Headringer. Headringer obviously combining with the Assault Laser attack of the other Manetric. It's another card that can hit 120 damage, so that we can hit into 230 HP Megas quite nicely. It's really good for defending, once again, against Rayquaza. Good against defending against Toad, although I feel like we already have a fairly strong matchup there. And it's just going to limit the options of certain other decks. Putting it on stuff like Tyranitar can make it very awkward for them, because then our Lugia just gets so strong, and if they can't respond on it, like immediately, we're going to take multiple prizes with that. So Headringer, just really nice disruption card. We have the space for it, so I was pretty happy to put this in. You could try throwing in Enhanced Hammers in this guy's place, but I feel like it makes sense because of the Assault Laser. And we have the space, like I say, for the 2 disruption cards, so I think Headringer really fits the bill quite nicely. Next up, we have the 4 Spirit Link. I've decided to maximize the 4 because it's just so powerful getting that turn 2 Mega Evolution off, and missing it really does suck. So having the 4, because we don't have many good supporters, like I keep reiterating, just gives us a maximum chance of getting this in the first 2 turns, so it's pretty useful to have that. On to supporters now. Let me clear this out of the way for you guys. We have 1 Hex Maniac. I've alliterated to it already. Like I say, great against Rayquaza, so we can shut off Altaria. So now either we just shut it off with Hex Maniac, or we can catch a round and kill the Altaria. We have a pretty decent matchup against Ray overall, thanks to our acceleration. So we sort of exchange one-shots for a couple of turns, but then they sort of run out of steam, and we can hit the Hex Maniac when we can, and carry on getting the 1 hits. So it's really nice to have that in here. It also gets us around stuff like Aegislash. We do play quite a bit of colourless and well, we have special energy in the form of double colourless, so we can stack up a big Lugia if they have a big Aegislash going, and we can just Hex Maniac them on that sort of turn. Also, we can get around Giratina with its ability that stops us attacking with Mega Pokemon, so there's plenty of reasons why Hex Maniac's good. Also, it's the safety net against Vileplume every now and again, so it's good to have one in here. Next up, we're playing 1 Shauna and 1 Birch. Let me keep the Hex Maniac out there. This is basically because I've not really figured out which one's my favourite. Because we're playing the Battle Compressor and the full VS Seeker, there's times when I'm going to want to Birch, there's times when I want to Shauna. So I just like having the option to play both. I'm not happy with either of them, really. They're never really my first choice supporter that I want to dig for, but every now and then I'm going to need them to just refresh the hand, and I'll sort of assess whether I'm really digging for cards but can't get rid of my hand. I'll probably go for this guy. If I just want to refresh and I'm not really bothered about doing much else this turn, Shauna's probably the safer option. So it's an interesting trade-off. Even though they're very similar cards, they're definitely situational in terms of when you pick one over the other. So I like having the option to play both. Next up, we play 1 Fan Club. Fan Club is again a good turn 1 VS Seeker Battle Compressor type combo. Gets us into Hoopa once again, which gets us so many cards. So I just like having 1 in here. It really helps us set up the board quite nicely. So we have this and 4 Ultra Balls to try and hit off that Hoopa turn 1, and that really does set you up for the entire game. Next up, 2 Lysander. Good for getting around other targets that we want to pick off. Definitely if they're building stuff up, Lugia can really punish that sort of strategy. Again, we can pick off Shamans very nicely with this deck as well. Because of the weakness that we have, we can just attack with a non-Mega for 60 and do ×2 damage. So Lysander's always nice in here. We need it to get around other things as well, so 2 just makes sense in my opinion. And finally, we are playing the 4 Sycamore. It's overall a pretty low count of supporters. You might think about putting like an Archie Swampert combo in here. I know that people at the moment are loving the Manetric Empoleon based deck in current format, but I didn't really like the Archie Swampert simply because I'd rather Hooper and fill the bench space that way with like a Hooper, a Shaman, and then your other attackers. So I personally haven't gone down that route. I know that some people are discussing that, and maybe it's a list for another day, but fairly low supporter count. It's basically just reusing VS Seekers is the way we sort of get around it, and banking on these Shamans. So I'm happy with the supporter line overall. Finally, for stadiums, we're playing the 3 Rough Seas. It makes Manetric a very annoying target to kill. Also, Seismitoad becomes very annoying to kill. Definitely if we're switching between these targets, it really forces pressure on your opponent to Lysander when they have the opportunity, because if they don't, maybe they miss the chance of getting the 2-hit knockout because we've healed up. So it's pretty good. Just having the potion every turn is really nice, and we have a lot of things that we can heal, so pretty much everything but the Lugia gets value out of this. So Rough Sea is a very nice stadium to have, and it bounces other people's things out of the way as well, so I like playing 3 in here. Next up, we're playing 4 double colourless. It means we can attack turn 1 with Toad and with Lugia as well. It also helps us against other people's head ringers, so that we can still get the Assault Laser off turn 2. So I really like playing 4 DC in here. We get so much value out of it for the most part, so really, really good. And finally, we're playing 8's Lightning Energy. It gives us plenty of options to get attacking with Turbo Bolt. It means we can happily dump away with Ultra Balls and Battle Compressors and still have plenty to keep us going throughout the whole game. This deck is very sort of heavy on energy. It does end up filling the board with quite a few, so I really like having the total count of 12 and plenty of options for finding those lightning energies early on. So overall, it's a pretty standard Manetric list, I would say. How it's going to look in the future. Lugia gives it a small buff, helps it out against covering its weakness. But the real thing is, just in general, Hoopa provides so much support for Mega EXs that it really makes Manetric very, very consistent at coming out into turn 2. And I think this is pretty much a consistent build to start going off of and start practicing from there. So I've been Joe, guys, from OmniPoke. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more XY on Ancient Origins deck lists, and see you next time.